We're going to go over some of the Amendment 64 recommendations that have been proposed for the legislative session here. And I think overall that we've had, a real interesting time here with this task force. But we do want to make sure as we implement this law that we implement the right law for our businesses. And a lot of that is up in the air. We don't quite know what the best route to take is. And we're still in discussion and debates on a lot of these issues. So I'm going to introduce my panel. We have Charles Houghton from Colorado Springs. Charles Houghton practice emphasizes a legal and regulatory framework for operating medical marijuana businesses. He's a 35-year real estate attorney that got into medical marijuana. And then we have Warren Edson. Warren Edson is a Denver-based attorney, just ran recently for Denver's District 8 City Council. And he's a graduate of our very own DU, so we want to thank Warren for being here tonight. We also have Robert Corey. Robert Corey is allowed to practice law in Colorado and California. Allowed. They let him.
Reluctant.
They don't want him to, though, because he wins too much. But as a matter of fact, he's actually won and tried more medical marijuana jury trials than every attorney put together. So that's huge. We also have Craig Small. Craig Small was on the Amendment 64 task force. He's from Syracuse University, and he is part of our panel tonight. Thank you for being here. We also have Sean McAllister. Sean McAllister is one of the ground fighters here in Colorado. He's worked on the DUID bill, the Amendment 64 regulatory framework, and a lot of other things that ordinances that we've enacted. So thank you for being here tonight. With that said, did you guys see this in the Westward today?
Can't read it from here.
Okay, so basically it says, what if we regulated alcohol like marijuana? Right? So if we did, a glass of wine with dinner or beer after work on a hot day is proof of alcoholism. Consuming one drink of alcohol on the weekend is grounds to be fired by any employer. If a child sees a parent consume alcohol, protective services may remove the child from the home. If no alcohol may be served by the drink anywhere else in Colorado. All publicly viewable consumption at sporting events, backyards, political rallies, fraternal organizations, breweries, vineyards, farmers markets, and picnics, even if the alcohol is free, is a crime. Alcohol consumption outside a private home is a crime. No alcohol consumption may be viewed by a child, including private homes, if a passing child could see through a window or door. No alcohol advertising is allowed except for only adult publications. All alcohol production and sales must be a monopoly selected by the state. All craft beer is illegal. Only large brewers may be licensed as retailers. All alcohol sales are package sales only, must be in childproof containers and placed in plain dark paper exit packaging stapled shut before leaving the store. Non-Colorado citizens will be limited to 1 bottle of beer per purchase. Colorado citizens will be limited to a 6-pack per purchase. Home brewers must grow their hops under artificial lights in a separate locked space, and brewing must be also occur in that locked space. Using sunshine is a crime. All hops for brewers, crops intended to produce alcohol must not be grown on agriculturally zoned land. All brewers must grow their own hops and brew all their own beer. Each brewer is limited to a single retail packaged outlet. Alcohol retailers must sell alcohol and nothing else. There are strict limits on the number of licenses that can be owned by one individual or group, the size of licensed premises, and the size of the brewery. Outside investment in beer production or hops growing is illegal. The state must discourage the consumption of Colorado alcohol products. Everyone must work for the alcohol monopoly. Free enterprise is a crime. All transactions must be in cash, and no retailer can use a credit or banking service. All brewer waste, grain, spillage must be placed in the trash or given to anyone, including animal feeding. All waste must be safely disposed of according to DOR regulations. All alcohol is for intoxication only. Any other medical or laboratory use by hospital, university, biotechnology, Pharmaceutical, biofuel, or industrial entity is a crime. So what do you guys think of that?
Whoever wrote that is a genius. I mean,
It came from the Bill Outhouse, the executive director of the Regulate Alcohol Like Marijuana campaign. And the Westward published it today.
Let me hear that again.
Yeah.
Regulate alcohol like medical.
I mean, regulate marijuana like alcohol.
No, actually, I think it says regulate alcohol like marijuana.
It does.
He wants to take alcohol and put it like we regulate marijuana.
Okay, so that's pretty genius, huh?
It is. And it points out the absurdity of what they want to do.
We like him. Okay, so let's start the panel with the questions. First question, why use the MMJ vertical integration model for recreational marijuana? Is it possible for the current MMCs to really meet the demand in 2014 to be able to sell enough marijuana to all of these new recreational people? And if so, is there enough space for them to be able to stay vertically integrated?
I'll jump in. I mean, that's a great question. As we all know, the current market is 108,000 patients who have their red cards issued by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. That's the entirety of the consumer base right now in medical marijuana. Last time I checked, they can't keep their marijuana on the shelves right now for 108,000 people. They cannot produce enough right now. So this proposal from the task force says you're going to take this existing industry, and there are very good people in this industry. They work very hard. They try to do what they can. You're going to take that industry. That industry is somehow going to meet the demand for 4 million adults in Colorado and every other adult who sets foot in our state who has the right to exercise their rights under our laws. That's their proposal. And this is what we predicted in this space. When I was sitting here a few weeks ago, you let a governor who campaigned against 64, he campaigned against it. He cut radio ads against it, and he looked like a deer in the headlights the night that it passed. Remember that? That was a beautiful night. And then this governor, who has his roots in the alcohol industry, by the way, I might add, that's his personal background. This governor appoints the entire task force, and again, there are some good people on that task force. They're going to get outvoted every time. That's the product of this task force. They want to superimpose the medical model on a massive recreational market that will not work. Luckily, we do have a safety valve. We have unregulated, untaxed collectives. I've opened 30 of them in the past few months. They're fully compliant with existing laws in Colorado. They're doing quite well.
But what about the actual current MMC model? What do you think, Sean? You shook your head at first. What do you think about actual vertical integration? How is this going to work? Will it work for our system? Because right now it seems like it might pass.
I mean, the reason we have vertical integration again is because a weak industry is scared to death of competition, and so it's asked to replicate the rules. So there's a lot of sympathy. The campaign, like Rob said, Craig did a great job on the commission, but even the campaign ultimately wilted to the idea that, okay, let's just continue this bad regulatory model that medical developed. And it's unfortunate, but imagine if you'd been that entrepreneur, and some of you were in the audience, who'd worked 4 years and hadn't even made any money yet, and then we blew the door open and said, all right, now anybody from anywhere in the world can compete with you. They got what they wanted with that argument by saying it's not fair, we know what works, it's this current model, and so the industry protected itself, and that's why we're going to have vertical integration. Again, I'm going to continue to argue against it, but I heard today from the campaign, for example, I said, 70-30 is crazy. Why should we be limited to having to grow 70% of our own or wholesale 30%? And the answer was, well, if you could grow, the concern is that if you could wholesale infinite amounts, that all these entrepreneurs would get so excited about it, they would go out and build 100,000-foot warehouses and overbuild, and then they'd have all this pot they couldn't sell, and they're going to then sell it out the back door, even though it's on the camera. So, I mean, these kind of arguments won the argument at the end of the day, and that's why it looks like, there's not been a lot of creative thinking, and we're going to get vertical integration again, and I think it's ridiculous, but it's it's an outgrowth of lack of imagination and bias towards the industry as it is, and Craig can say more about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think they went with the safe route, and a lot of the arguments they were making may sound good from the beginning, but when you start picking apart these arguments, they don't make sense. These guys have already made some of the arguments. I don't see why it makes sense that existing medical marijuana businesses should be able to have a monopoly on starting a retail recreational business in the future. That just flies against the face of free market and capitalism. And the second argument they were making is that, well, we need this vertical integration system because for record tracking reasons. And I was arguing, actually, the system you have will provide less record keeping because the guy reporting how much he grew in his grow to how much he's bringing over to his MMC, he's the same guy reporting it on both sides. But if you have two different people reporting it to a third government agency, just like the IRS, then you need to make sure that the government agency needs to make sure that both people are reporting it correctly. So that argument fails. Ultimately, and the third argument was, well, the federal government may have been leaving Colorado alone because of our vertical integration model, and so if we continue with this model, they'll continue to leave us alone. Well, what's interesting is that the Washington legalization ballot initiative, their law actually forbids vertical integration. So the very argument they're using to push Colorado's vertical integration would necessarily sink Washington, and I don't think we're going to see that.
I've been saying the sick thing about it is the same people who lack the vision to support Amendment 64 have now been asked to tell us how to implement it, and that's medical marijuana industry group who didn't support Amendment 64, that's the legislators who didn't come out. So it's like Rob said, I mean, we've turned this over to a group of people who had so little vision that they couldn't see that the voters already supported this.
They're going to vote on vertical integration. Have they looked at the numbers and said, how are these, I mean, I know there's a lot of patients here who, what's going to happen to their plants if their MMC decides to go recreational?
Well, it says they convert over to become the center's plants once it becomes retail, which will be interesting because, I mean, right now, those patients assign their grow rights to a specific center. But I guess come January 1st, they're screwed because it now is owned by the center. And obviously that makes for an easy transfer, but it'll be interesting to see what happens when the patients start to realize that. Because certainly if they come November say, screw you, I'm withdrawing my rights, that would have an interesting effect on everybody.
Oh my gosh. I mean, and how much will they have to pay at that point? Their medicine, they would just have to pay recreational prices?
Yeah, plus 25% tax probably. And
so it's almost like forcing the patient to the black market, keeping the vertical integration. Where did the number 70-30 come from?
Out of
Romer?
What's his name's ass? The first
no, it was director. Made up. It was a completely made up political number. It was 90-10 at one point. It was 50-50 at one point. They compromised. It's, typical political compromise. They pulled 70-30 completely out of their hats.
Clearly the will of the people.
And then they tried to not call it the 70-30 rule anymore. They tried to call it something else, but at that point it was too late.
Yeah, I mean, basically what they did with medical marijuana is they made it a retail-oriented business. So you have to really have a lot of people in the front door because your wholesale is limited to 30%. And that's what's unfortunate is that, that changes. People have actually been selling. That's maybe what you could argue that's what's brought prices down because people are selling wholesale prices out the front door. But all these concerns you have are absolutely right. I mean, people are going to be in a tough position when the transition happens.
The task force envisioned a model where on the back end, as far as the wholesale grows, it can be a virtual separation, so you don't have to actually make any physical changes. But on the front side, they're saying that, and I was advocating that you should be able to walk in and either show your rec card or show a driver's license, and then it just, from the point of sale system, it's just handled differently, but there shouldn't be a different entrance and exit. That's actually what they're advocating in the task force, which I did not vote for.
Different entrance and exit.
The physical different entrances and exits. And they're saying that because on the recreational side, no one under 21 should be there, but on the medical side, there might be someone who's under 21. But I was arguing, well, then why are we preventing minors from or going, not even minors, but people 18 to 21 from going into liquor stores or wherever alcohol is served. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, well, we know that 1284 pretty much killed the caregiver, and that was one of the worst things that we really did for medical marijuana, because nobody could really grow quality medication anymore. So when Amendment 64 was proposed, and I know, Sean, you had a part in writing this, and Rob, you had a part in writing this, it seemed like we had a division of licenses and that we were going to create a separate system. Have the feds ever put pressure on us to vertically integrate or said that we have a better tracking system because we're vertically integrated? Because if you could track something from one location and one part of the wholesale the whole wholesale part of your business to the retail part of your business, couldn't you do that even if you were not forced to vertically integrate? Maybe say you had the option, and we could maybe prove how that would be good for our public policy and safety by not pushing that black market?
That was the example I was giving earlier, and I think a good analogy is an employer-employee relationship or an employer 1099 relationship where each side is reporting to the IRS how much money I paid versus how much money I received. So the IRS, if those numbers don't match up, then the IRS knows that something's going on. We've actually taken that safeguard out of vertical integration. So a business owner could lie about how much they're sending from their wholesale to their retail, and no one would know because it's one person who could cook the books. As far as federal intervention goes, they've been very silent on the whole issue. I wonder, and it's not based off of any evidence or anything, but I wonder if there's any unofficial talk going on, but I can't really testify to that.
Yeah, I can
and
respond to
the
that.
thing that I've seen, and I saw it when they did vertical integration in the first place, I personally never saw how that enhanced the ability to track the product in any way. I mean, if you've got a separate grow and center, it's being tracked, and it doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter whether it's going from a grow to your own center or a grow to another center. It's being tracked every step of the way. I never understood why vertical integration was required, number one, and how somehow that mysteriously enhances the ability to track the product. I argued vigorously against it, saying you can track it without vertical integration, and that's just, it was hocus pocus then, and I think it's hocus pocus now.
The government didn't trust the grower. It was a lot easier to trust the retail guy because he had a store that was open. So screw it, dump the responsibility in the retail guy's lap and make him regulate the grower. And then you're also responsible for all this licensing, so if your grower screws around, you get dinged too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
I agree.
Do you think that the MMED has done a very good job of regulating this?
The idea that vertical integration is going to get you some better monitoring. It's more about the recommendations in here that the General Assembly fund the new department with general fund dollars so that they're not dependent on permitting. I think we are going to see real regulation coming, and it will change the industry because I think there's a significant percentage of people out there right now. Look, it's a 20-day backup on your video, and if the video goes out for 2 hours and then something happened, no one's going to, it's a Swiss cheese system right now. But they might really kill it with real regulation, with real funding for regulators.
I think the MMED has done about as good a job as they can given the funding and staffing problems they've had.
And it's a good question because, I've made a lot of fun of the MMED. The MMED literally has more SUVs than people to drive them.
Not anymore.
Right.
That's how they conducted their business. I mean, they behaved like a bunch of stoners, if you will. That said, though, the MMED was saddled with a responsibility, an unenforceable bunch of mandates they didn't create. MMED didn't create vertical integration. They didn't invent that concept. They didn't invent the concept of 70-30, which is unenforceable. Think about it. Just think about it for 2 seconds. How do you enforce a 70-30 requirement? How do you make sure that a retailer is growing 70% of its product that it puts on the shelves? How do you actually ensure that's happening? How do you ensure that King Soopers, 70% of the apples that show up on your shelves are grown in King Soopers owned orchards. It's impossible. So the legislature gave MMED an impossible bunch of mandates. They are trying hard somewhat with huge understaffing. And 64, which I helped write, we expressly said it was the Department of Revenue that was supposed to promulgate these regulations, not the legislature. So that is a backstop we have. If the legislature screws it up and the train is beginning to leave the station in a very bad direction, if the legislature messes it up, at least we have 64's mandate that legislature, you're not the ones who are supposed to be creating these regulations in the first place. It's supposed to be the actual people whose boots are on the ground, who have enforced these regulations for 2 years. They've tried to do it. They've largely failed. I mean, nobody can say whether somebody's compliant with 70-30. It's completely smoke and mirrors. So I guess that's the long answer to that question. MMED is a complex agency. They tried to steal $7 million from the patient fund. The legislature said no to that, rightfully so. And here we are. The MMED is poised to become the marijuana enforcement division.
Let's talk about taxes. Overtaxing the industry. We're now going to have a 15%. We have a proposed 15% retail tax. Plus we have the wholesale tax. If we have to stay vertically integrated, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, my specialty, people are calling me for mergers and acquisitions, but everybody and their mother's calling me for warehouse space. But there is not enough warehouse space for our patients. And there's not enough, I mean, there's not even enough outside investment for the current businesses to be able to expand as they need to. And right now, you can give me money. If you want to give me $3 million dollars signed to Chloe Villano, you can do that and I can pay you. I have to pay you. I can mail you money, however. It just has to be to me personally. What do you guys see with this taxing system, with this money system that we're doing? I mean, we're going to send our own businesses to the black market. We're already sending half of them there. So what would we propose a way that we could talk some sense into them, I mean, and explain to them exactly what we're doing? That it does take time to build it, that Rome wasn't built in a day. And how could we do that with really showing them that it's the best thing for public policy and the safety of the people by not creating that black market?
Well, the proposal is for a 15% excise tax, which if you have vertical integration is uncollectible because you can't tax the same entity. An excise tax is wholesaler to retail.
But they proposed to do that.
And it's impossible to enforce.
But just, yeah.
Internal taxation, a brand new concept, has never been tried, won't be enforced. Then the task force proposal on top of the 15% excise tax, which is in 64. We wanted that. We wanted it to go to school construction. We wanted independent wholesalers paying independent retailers that 15% sales or excise tax. Then on top of that, the task force says 25% sales tax. So now we're up to a 40% effective tax rate. On top of that, the Colorado sales tax is 2.9%. If you're in Denver, it's 7%.
Federal,
so,
50%.
So we are up to nearly a 50% effective tax rate at the state level. Okay? The black market is going to undercut that instantly. These collectives can undercut that instantly. So the government will set this industry up for
failure. And then
failure.
add buying limits in.
Tax-free. The black market doesn't charge tax.
But yeah, I think we have to be realistic too. Remember, we all talked about, I mean, everybody remembers black market prices in 2006. It was $400 an ounce or $3.50 an ounce. And you're not paying that in regulated marijuana dispensaries right now. So I think there is a question. I think that is the balance they're trying to set, is if they do too much, you know, they will empower the black market. But I happen to think that the price will probably go down another 50%.
So let's talk about that a little bit, Warren. We're going to have a proposed, what is it, an eighth? If you come from out of state, you're not going to be able to buy a full amount, full ounce.
It doesn't have a number.
It doesn't have a number.
It doesn't have a number, but you
They
won't
are
be able to
talking
buy as
about-
much, because God forbid you smoke it all,
If
you'll
you're from
OD.
in-state, you won't be able to buy a full ounce. They're talking about limiting the in-state purchase to less than an ounce and the out-of-state to even more. And I said, well, that's ridiculous.
Where can they smoke it? Because they can't smoke it in their hotel room. They can't go to a club and smoke it. It's illegal even in the Clean Air Act, isn't it, to smoke it outside on their balcony in the... I mean...
That's something the committee said they're going to look into, whether you could smoke it on an outside porch on private property. This whole issue of social clubs is something that's going to probably get shut down by the legislature, but it is unfortunate. But there should be able to be a private space. I mean, my clients in the mountains are renting private space so that people can go smoke there from hotels. So, I mean, that's already happening. And more of that will happen, and we'll see what the legislature does.
You've got to be kidding, really?
It's beyond insane. So if any of you are from Utah, you can purchase one beer back there, just one. If you're from Colorado, if you're from Colorado, you can purchase as much as you want. It's insane. We voted to treat this like alcohol. That's what we voted on. Don't let them get away with that kind of garbage. Think about it.
And the only way they know is if we tell them.
We want people to come to our state and purchase as much alcohol or marijuana as they can. That's economics.
And be able to smoke it together. Whatever happened to socializing, the pursuit of happiness, meeting your future, friends and husbands and boyfriends and living and actually enjoying the fact. I mean, didn't we pass this because we kind of wanted to be high?
Hey,
man. You know what I mean? We actually liked it better than alcohol.
But unlike Washington
State,
State, we at least changed that. Unlike Washington State, we allow people to pack each other bong hits because that didn't get fixed in Washington State. So at least that got fixed. And before, we've been all negative Nancy's. I mean, there is some good recommendations here. I mean, there's recommendations to get rid of the blue sky mess and actually confirm contracts. There's an attempt to fix some of the tax stuff with state tax deductions. Does that help a lot? No, not really. But it's better than nothing and all they can do. It kind of sort of addresses the waste disposal problem because and it authorizes potential studies. Now, whether or not, as Sean knows, I mean, our labs in this state now are a friggin' joke. And whether or not those studies fall into that category, we'll see. But at least it's a start.
Well, it's funny how it's about how high of a THC content you have from one piece of bud instead of there's fecal matter or whatever these plants are being fed that's in these, nutrients. What if that's left? That can't be good for a patient. So the testing is really,
the point you made needs to be made more. I thought at the last task force meeting, some of the best testimony was, all this negative Nancy stuff, like Warren said. We need people to stand up and, I hate to say it, but look respectable and say, marijuana has been a healthy, positive thing in my life, and it has not destroyed my life, and we don't need to talk about this like it's a forest fire or like Hickenlooper does. And it's like you're saying, that's why we need to be able to have an opportunity to smoke together and have places for people who can't do it in their house or their hotel room to come together and be able to share it. And I just... again, we're asking people with a lack of vision to have vision now, but we need to keep pressing.
Here's the thing, Rob. How the hell did we get through a month and a half of this bullshit without anybody addressing 186401 and the fact that growing in your home is still child abuse, whether or not they don't even have to prove harm to the kid? We went through pages and pages of CRS changes, and growing is still child abuse, and it didn't get addressed. And they don't have to show harm. Let me be really clear. If it's on your premises, they can charge you with child abuse, no matter what the F-64 says, 20 says, anything says. It says they can charge you with that, and they have. So just be really aware of that, because somehow we've gotten through all this crap without that being addressed. And I'm not sure, I'm boring half the people who've seen me say this over and over and over again, but God damn it. I mean, it's still there, and it's still unaddressed, and they don't have to prove harm. And it's just going to get worse when they get this goddamn 5 nanogram thing through, because then everybody who's 5 nanograms are going to treat like you're 0.8 24/7 BAC. And they're going to be, oh, Jesus Christ, it's 5 nanograms all the time. You must be fucked up. And then they combine this. I mean,
How can you be a parent if you're always at 5 nanograms?
And it could have been really easy, because right now it says all Schedule I drugs, and they just could have exempted marijuana and medical marijuana, but it didn't happen, and it sits there. And that is the elephant in the room as far as I'm concerned, because that's what social services talked about all day today in family law drug court.
This market obviously needs investment. Is there any way to be able to convince this committee that we need this in order to build out? Our current businesses need the investment in order to build out, but we can't take out-of-state investments. How many people are we going to find who actually want to buy into the business and be full on responsibility and all of that? I mean, it's very difficult to get those investments, and I mean, how is that looking?
Well, maybe someone can correct me, but you can be an out-of-state investor. You just can't be an out-of-state owner of a business. So normal investment that involves a promissory note and return on interest, of which the MMED has said that even though Colorado law says that 45% is considered the cap, the MMED has said, well, we're going to look very closely at anything over 21%. So out-of-state residents can invest in businesses. There's a few maybe weird things, like the city of Boulder treats investors like owners and requires them to go through background checks, and that's kind of been a deterrent. But right now, out-of-state residents can invest.
Okay.
But, you know, without the ability for an out-of-state investor to secure their investment, it's very difficult, because most of the people, I mean, the transactions that I put together, the out-of-state investor lends the money either to the business or to one of the owners, and then they lend it to the business. When you tell them that they can't have a security interest in anything, that means they can't secure the debt. They look like they just ate a bug. And they just, it makes it a very, very difficult sell to anyone who's going to say, you know, put in $200,000, and it's going to be based on little more than a handshake. And so until that gets fixed, you're not going to see an influx of a lot of out-of-state investors. And when you add that on top of the residency requirement that's following through with this, which I kind of hope they wouldn't do, but they're doing, it kind of shuts out the out-of-state investors. And of course, as long as it remains a Schedule I controlled substance, you're not going to find an institutional investor like a bank, a life insurance company, a credit union, or anything else that's even going to touch it.
Task force proposal on the table, as well as the current law, is you can't be an equity investor currently in a medical marijuana entity. If you own 1% of this and you're from California, no go. If you are an investor that has any control whatsoever, it can't happen. And that no other business in Colorado has that.
Well, and anyone with a personal relationship with a legislator needs to talk to them right now. Make your list, your issues, and talk to your legislator.
There's a lot of good people out there, you know, who have lobbyists, a lot of groups that are coming out, you know, private lobbyists. It's not a bad idea, because this is definitely your business. This is definitely your future. And, you know, feel free to talk to any of these guys on how you guys can be involved and how it's going to affect you, because it definitely will. And things are changing. But we can make a positive impact if we all stick together. And I think that that's something that this industry has done for a long time. We all believe in this. And whether it's medical to recreational, we still put it apart. We believe in our patients. We believe in that medical benefit. And I think we need to take care of them. I think we need to take care of our felons who can't be in this business. I mean, in 1284, right, we have this provision.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I want to thank you guys for really promoting people coming down tomorrow, because I'm down, I went through most of the task force meetings, sat through most of the working group meetings, so I witnessed the sausage being made. And I can tell you that what came out of the task force, the process was really ugly. You guys are hearing like the cleaned up version. You did not hear some of the bullshit that we did that was put forward on here. So you've seen kind of the cleaned up mess. But it's not set in stone, and these people do need to hear from you. have a little sympathy for our poor legislators because they're tackling some huge issues. They will admit they don't know this industry. We can't expect them to be at the level of understanding and knowledge that we are. They're being asked to deal with issues across the spectrum. And for us, marijuana is one piece. It's our life. It's one piece of what they have to deal with. So, it's like I was up at the Capitol yesterday and ran into some of the legislators that are on this joint committee. And I'll tell you, they want information. First thing they asked me was, they recognized me from testifying, but first thing they asked me was, so what do you think of vertical integration? I'm really struggling with this. So they're asking these questions. They may not get it right, but I believe, I have higher hopes for this group in this joint committee than I did for the task force. It's actually, considering I know what legislators they could have put on this group, it could have been really, really ugly, and they could have stacked it with prohibitionists. They didn't do that. 2 of the members on there actually came out in favor of Amendment 64 prior to the election, so that's a good sign. So please, come down, give them some respect, talk to them like real people. They do want the information. They are not up on some pedestal. Please come down at 1:30 tomorrow afternoon. If you can't do that, send them an email just saying, even if it's just one piece of all the recommendations that have come up. Warren, your recommendation, your issue with children is very important, and there are people on this group and there are people in the legislature that are very sympathetic to parenting issues. So those are the people that we need to talk to about that issue. Rob, your letter, I haven't seen it. I would love to see it, and I am happy to shop it around to all of the legislators that I know that I have built relationships with. If you can't do that, then just contact one. Find out who your House member is, who your senator is. Please talk to them because they care about their constituents. Let them know you live in their district and that you have power, that how they vote on and how they do on this is going to impact whether or not they keep their jobs in 2014. They need to know that.
Awesome.
Amen.
Because people that smoke pot, we vote. And we voted in favor of Amendment 64. They know also that marijuana got more votes than Barack Obama in this state.
Amen.
They are also very well aware of how the vote turned in their district, from their constituents. So please take advantage of that. I encourage you to come down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
All right. I want to thank everybody for coming today. And we're going to have all of the committee members, all of their emails will be up on the Cloverleaf Facebook page as well as our website. Check out our website. We have a bunch of questions. You can email us at info@cloverleafconsulting@gmail or info@cloverleafconsulting.com. And we will definitely discuss whatever issues that you have.